Welcome to Theology Unplugged. This is our segment through theology in a year. I'm going through all of theology in a year. Believe it or not, I'm gonna do it. And I've been having a blast so far, I really have. Been able to update my program called the Theology Program. If you guys have never seen the Theology Program or heard of it, I encourage you to go to Credo House, or Credo Courses, like the word credo, I believe in Latin, Credo Courses, just get one of the platinum packages. That has the whole theology program on it, although you can get the theology program by itself, but the platinum has so much. It's so worth it. But 6 courses, systematic theology for lay people. And let me tell you something, we don't dumb it down. If you've seen what we've done so far here, it is basically the same thing, just in a classroom setting, formal setting. You can get workbooks, you can have homework, you can start this in your church. There are PowerPoints. Get it. You need to get the theology program. You need to go through it. And if you've already been through it, go through it again with me right now. Go through it again, the whole thing, and start at your church. But one more thing, please, if you will, consider becoming a patron. This is my patron page, and I write stuff all the time. It's great. I love what I do as far as writing. I've been writing since 2005 on my blog. I still write on the Credo House blog some, but mainly now I write here. So this is the place to go, and you will see all kinds of posts, great posts. I think they're great. I don't know. Every time I think a post is great, doesn't do any good. Every time I think it sucks, it does great. So, but anyway, see all these posts here, and I post this podcast every time. Look at this. Why did the chicken cross the road? I got everybody. I've got Catholics. Because the chicken crossed the road as an act of penance, taking a pilgrimage to the other side. The Lutheran, the chicken crossed the road because grace was on one side of the road and law was on the other. Here's my favorite, Anglicanism. The chicken crossed the road but stopped in the middle as a via media between Lutherans and Catholics. Get it? Come on. You got to get that. That's too good. Great stuff. Okay, so this will keep you updated about everything that goes on with me and the ministry. So consider it. Consider becoming a patron. It's only $3. $3 a month. A coffee piece, or a cup of coffee a month. Less than a cup of coffee. Way less than a cup of coffee. But this is how I make a living. This is the primary way. Now, you can do a tax-deductible donation to our ministry. Go to Credo Ministries, not Credo Courses, but credoministries.com. The other one's credocourses.com. See, I got monopoly on Credo because I just like the word. Okay, let's go ahead and move forward with this. We are on our, 6th day? 6. We're on day 6. I think. We've got to be past day 6, right? No, I guess maybe I don't know. I think we're on day 6. Day 6 of going through theology in a year. And last time we started by talking about folk theology. We're talking about the different arenas in which people do theology. And these arenas are represented. Let me show you a little chart of the arenas. Let's see if I can get to it. There's a chart, and this is basically the layout, the landscape of all the different types of theologians there are out there. And whenever I put it this way, different types of theologians, so I'm saying there's tabloid theologians, folk theologians, lay, ministerial, professional, and academic. We're going through these one at a time, and we started with the tabloid, which is basically a hearsay, a flash-in-the-pan type theology, a newspaper theology, that type of thing. Anything anybody says, as long as it fits within your worldview, you believe it. But the folk theologian is, let's see here, Folk theology is one who uncritically and unreflectively constructs his or her theology according to traditions and religious folklore. That's the primary thing. Traditions and religious folklore. Why do you believe what you believe? Now, you got to ask yourself, everybody's got to ask themselves, why do I believe what I believe? Do I believe it because I've critically examined it? Or do I believe it because I'm just deep down emotionally committed to it because I've got so much time invested in it, I just really want it to be true? And anytime I think of somebody else's tradition, anytime I think of somebody else's religion, anytime I think of somebody else's denomination, it's easy for me to laugh because, of course they're wrong, that type of thing. That is a folk theologian. You just hold to what you hold because you've always held to it. So we went through some examples of folk theology last time. Let's see, bring these up here. We talked about all these, and I said that these were the easy ones, from views of heaven with clouds and harps, angels' wings, all the way down to the sinner's prayer. Now, I was getting a little bit more difficult as we move forward because the sinner's prayer, I might have stepped on a few toes. God helps those who help themselves. Didn't step on any toes, but sinner's prayer and asking Jesus into your heart. But on the next ones, I'm going to start, as we move down, stepping on more and more toes. So just forgive me up front, but we've got to go through this. I've got to give you examples of folk theology that's going to make you uncomfortable. That's my job. I've got to make you uncomfortable. Why? Because I want you to feel uncomfortable with me in a safe environment and one who is intent on helping you to rebuild your theology, not just leave it in shambles. I may break down. You may, after you hear some of these, get really disturbed. And a lot of people go through a time of doubt and disfiguration within your theology. Let me tell you something. That is okay. It really is. I promise. I'm not just trying to be cool and progressive. Okay, I'm not just trying to deconstruct you to deconstruct you. You really need to be deconstructed if you haven't been before. And we need to deconstruct ourselves all the time. The Reformers had a principle of semper reformanda. That basically says we have to reform all the time. The reformers of the 16th century, Martin Luther, John Calvin, Francis Turretin, they all knew how important it is for us to critically examine so that we might reform. So the church has not only reformed in the past, but we're always reforming. And that's what we're doing here. It's going to hurt. It's going to hurt, but just hang with me. Keep staying with me. Just don't leave. Okay, here we go. Let's go to the next one. This is kind of an easy one. It's not going to be that difficult. An apple in the garden. Why is that folk theology? I mean, that's a really good example, actually, of folk theology, because why do we say Eve ate an apple in the garden? Because that's just what we heard, and it just became an apple. I mean, we can look through the Bible and find apple somewhere in there where Eve ate an apple. No, you can't. It doesn't say Eve ate an apple. It was fruit. It was fruit from the tree. I don't know if it was an apple. Maybe it was. Maybe it was something like an apple. Maybe it was a banana. Do bananas hang on trees? Yeah, they do. Maybe it was a banana. Could be. Could you imagine that? Changing it to a banana? Well, it didn't start as a banana. Why not? If it would have started as a banana, that's what you would be emotionally tied to. But it was not. It is a apple in the garden. Okay, let's see here. How about this one? This one I think is really good. God will not give you more than you can handle. What do I mean by that? Well, of course God won't give you more than you can handle. It says that in the Bible. It says that in Corinthians. No, it doesn't. It does not. It says he will not tempt you beyond your ability to escape. But my goodness, Paul in Corinthians says that he was given a trials that were far beyond his capacity to handle. He says that explicitly. That's exactly what he says. It's kind of funny because we say God will not give us more than we can handle, but Paul, right before that, says, God's given me more than I can handle. But God has come in and lifted me up. He's kept me up. And I can tell you, and you could tell me, now that you've read this and you've got permission, you can tell me, I know that in your life, God has given you more than you can handle many times. And you cry out to God and you say, God, this is simply more than I can handle. And that's okay. That's okay, because that is part of what we go through. God breaks us down so that we can rest only on him. Okay, how about this one? This one's a tough one. It really is. Uh-oh, I lost it. No, I didn't lose that. Okay. This one's a little bit tougher, so hang with me. This one's really tough. Okay? Could be the toughest one. I mean, I've got so many examples of folk theology. We could go on and on and on, but I want to spend some time on these because I think these are the best examples to break you down and to get you thinking deeply. Okay, here we go. All sins are equal. Right? I mean, all sins are equal before God. So when we're talking to somebody, we say something like, you may be doing this particular sin, but I do my own, and all sins are equal before God. Right? It's kind of a gospel presentation, but it's part of the gospel presentation that we give. Unfortunately, just like the others, this simply is not true. It is not part of our theology that all sins are equal. James in James chapter 1 says if you've broken part of the law, you have broken all of the law, but that's not saying the same thing. It's not saying that whenever you break part of the law, say you lust after someone, you look at pornography, you say, oh, well, it's just the same as me actually committing adultery or fornication, so I might as well do it. You see, I think this idea that all sins are equal is probably the most destructive one of these because it trivializes the nature of sin, biblical nature of sin, and the nature of God, because here's what you're telling me. Okay, let me be an unbeliever and come to you. And boy, you better have thought through this. If you, in the end, study this and study it well critically and still believe all sins are equal, okay, it's not folk theology anymore. I think it's wrong. Doesn't have to be folk theology to be wrong, but I think it's wrong, but at least it's not folk theology. At least you are believing it, not because you have heard it repeated so many times. An apple, God will not give you more than you can handle. God helps those who help themselves. Cleanliness is next to godliness. Money is the root of all evil, all of which are wrong and not in the Bible. But you have at least critically examined it and come to the conclusion that you can defend it and you know why you believe what you believe. But all sins are equal. James says that, but he's not saying, wait. Let me get to the trivialization of God. Listen to this. Here's what you're telling an unbeliever. You're saying to somebody brand new to the faith, outside of the tradition of Christianity, and you say all sins are equal in the sight of God. And they go through their mind, and they've seen sin in their life. They may have seen the ugliest part of sin there is. And here's what they're thinking. They say, okay, so the God you want me to serve believes that let's say, floating a stop sign, because that's illegal, therefore it is a sin technically because we are to follow the government. So you're telling me that floating a stop sign to God, this God you want me to serve, is just as bad as raping and murdering a 6-year-old girl? You say, yeah, all sins are equal. Boy, I'll tell you what, let me tell you something, all right? Let me tell you something. You better be sure about that if that's what you believe, okay? I do not believe that in any sense. I don't think the Bible teaches it. I'll tell you in just a minute why, more about it. but man, what you're presenting to people, and I'm not saying the nature of God is a democracy. The characteristics, the attributes of God are a democracy where we vote. We say, well, I don't like that, or I do like that. In the end, we accept God for who he is, not who we want him to be. We do not vote on who we want him to be. And sometimes there's some very, very difficult things that we're called to accept within Christianity. There is. And you gotta have that theology going forward, that you may have to. There are mysteries in the Christian faith that God calls on us to accept. But you better be sure about this, that all sins are equal, because you are saying something that, man, that is a tough one. That is a very, very tough one that would be hard to reconcile with our current human morality and understanding of morality, that God thinks floating a stop sign is the same sin as just as bad as raping and murdering a 6-year-old girl. You may say, Michael, but all sins are eternal to God. Well, so that doesn't say anything about it. Let me tell you something, okay? Let's talk about Scripture. Okay, Christ at one point says to the Pharisees, "You strain out a gnat and you swallow a camel," basically meaning you do the little things that are right. You don't break those commandments, but you break the bigger commandments like justice and mercy. So they were tithing their salt and pepper, basically. They were tithing their salt and pepper. I kid you not. They would take 10% of it and set it aside for God, but then they would go be unjust, unmerciful, and legalistic, and all kinds of things that broke bigger parts, swallowing the camel. They strained out the gnat over here by tithing their salt and pepper, but they swallowed the camel by their lack of mercy, by their lack of grace. And so you would have to go to Christ and say, wait a minute, Christ, hold on, I got a question. Christ, you forgot all sins are equal in God's sight. Christ, oh no, gosh, I forgot. There's no gnats and there's no camels. They're all either camels or gnats or something in between, right? That's not true. That's not true. How about whenever the Bible in the Old Testament specifically lays out certain sins as abominations to the Lord? It does. It does. It sets them aside. And you can say, listen, guys, Bible translators, from now on, whenever you get to this word, this is an abominable sin, just take the white out and white it out, okay? Erase it, because we don't need it anymore. Because we know our theology has trumped Scripture, and you don't need those adjectives to describe certain sins, because it's either they all have the same adjective or none of them have an adjective. You see? Okay, let me give you another one. You think I'm not there yet. Okay. Let me just jump straight to the point, because I'm going to take up too much time on this. Jesus standing before Pilate. Anybody know what Jesus says whenever Pilate attempts to release him? He wants to release him. What does Jesus say to Pilate? Anybody? What are the words he says to him? Anybody? Come on, we got a lot of people in this room. Somebody tell me what Jesus says to Pilate. By the way, all of you who are listening to this afterwards, you can join us live. We probably in the morning, sometime each morning. That's set aside. Okay, nobody's brave enough to say it, but let me tell you something. Here's what Jesus says to Pilate. He who has handed me over to you is guilty of the anybody? Of the greater sin. He who handed me over to you is guilty of the greater sin. Lord, I got a question. I don't got a question. I just have a correction. I don't mean to be a know-it-all, but there's no greater sin, so they're all the same. I mean, right there, from the mouth of Jesus, there are greater sins and lesser sins. There are this deadly sins, which are, they're not kind of like what the Catholics talk about sometimes, I don't think. but there is a list in Proverbs that talks about certain sins as worse than others. I mean, over and over throughout the Bible, we see that. We see the character of God. Now, let me tell you something. All people, from a theological standpoint, this is what I believe, all people are equally depraved before God, but not all people act out that depravity to the same degree. Did you get that? Because that is right, I believe. Go study it for yourself again. This is something we're working through together. This is the type of class it is. But I don't want to preach too much. But I want to comfort you here a little bit, because this gives you a little bit of reprieve, because some of you are mad at me and you're bent out of shape because you thought all sins were equal, and you still emotionally do, but you're seeing that the arguments I'm making make sense. All people are equally depraved, but they do not act out that depravity to the same degree. I think that is a theologically correct way to put it. Some people do commit worse sins than others. Indeed, raping and murdering a 6-year-old girl is worse than floating a stop sign. Infinitely worse. There's just a great distinction within the Bible. Actually committing adultery is worse than thinking about it. Okay, so makes sense, doesn't it? Makes more sense. So that I propose to you, and I hand it over to you for your consideration as a folk theology. Hopefully that will, those of you who believe it. I was asked this actually in my ordination exam by a Dallas Theological Seminary prof, and I was actually a little bit nervous about what answer he wanted. He said, "Michael, are all sins equal before God?" And I sat there for a minute. I said, does he want the traditional answer? Does he still believe that? Or does he want the right answer? And I did say, no, they're not. And I passed. So it was approved by them. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. Okay, guardian angels. What? That's so easy. Why do I put something so simple over there? I need to redo this so that all the easy ones are on the left. They just get progressively harder, because that's not hard. We will all have new abilities in heaven. I'm going to run through these, and I'm going to go a little bit longer this time than I've been going, the usual 27 to 30 minutes. Please hang with me, because some of these we need to talk about more than others, right? Or do I need to do a number 3? Maybe I need to do a number 3, because this is heavy stuff. This really is. This is stuff. I'm going to stop right there, because I got a lot more to go through, and I think some of these are going to be nearly as difficult for you as the all sins are equal. But hopefully that is at least giving you what I need to give you, so that you feel the discomfort that I need you to feel. You see what I'm saying? I need you to feel this discomfort. This is part of the deconstruction process. I'm here. Listen, I'm here. I am a Christian. I consider myself a pretty conservative Christian. I consider myself an evangelical Christian. Not going to be arguing only for those positions every single time, because we need to think through everything. But at the same time, here's what I want you to know, is I'm not some progressive coming to break down your faith and again leave you broken and withered and say, good, that's the way you should be. I'm not doing that. I am doing this. I am trying to break you free of your emotional commitment to a lot of traditions that you've held before, and in doing so, teach you how we need to learn. This is the process every single time. You're going to have to go through the discomfort of thinking, maybe I'm wrong. I'm giving you some things that I think, if you believe before, you are absolutely wrong about, but I'm asking you to go look at it, go test it, go research it. And I'll teach you more and more how to research as we go through this first prolegomena, the first things, introduction to theology, the prologue of this book that we're getting ready to go through called Theology. Not really going through a book, you see what I'm saying? It's a metaphor. Although you can go through a book. If you get the workbook for Introduction to Theology, it will give you 2 books to get with readings every single period, every single class period. And you can keep up that way. That'd be a good idea. Okay, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope this has been something that you find beneficial. We're going to come back next Monday and finish our folk theology. Please, if you can, support us. I mean, $3 a month or something. I'm trying to build a theological coffee house that becomes the bastion of this kind of stuff in Edmond, Oklahoma. And I want to build that. I want it to be exciting. And I want to do it right. I've done it before. I need to do it right this time, and I'm doing it differently. I'm building an infrastructure way beforehand, so I'm trying to get lots and lots of people to donate to this ministry before I move forward with it. I need to have the commitments beforehand. So please, if you believe in theology, if you believe in what I'm doing, if you believe in the way I'm doing it, I've been doing this for 25 years. Hang with me, okay? I know what I'm doing. I'm not saying I'm perfect at it at all. I'm not saying I haven't failed. You know me. If you followed me, I've failed so many times, both personally and in ministry. But hang with me, okay? I'm not. I believe in this, and I believe in what we're doing right now, going through theology in a year. So join us again next time. Here are the 2 places right there: credoministries.org or Patreon. /C Michael Patton. You can always find me at /C Michael Patton of Facebook, /C Michael Patton, Twitter, /C Michael Patton, what's that one? TikTok, /C Michael Patton, or Patreon, /C Michael Patton. But I'd follow me anywhere, but Patreon is where I need your support. I've got you don't understand how much good stuff you get, how much good theology. You sign up for Patreon, $25 a month, and you get the entire theology program, all of our courses besides the theology program that we have under the same methodology. This is the same type of stuff, although I'm not teaching them, but same type of stuff, and it's good theology, guys. It's really, really good theology, and I need you guys to love God with all of your mind. I'm not saying you don't already, and I'm not saying there are not other things in your life and emotions that play a part in your experience. We'll talk about that later, but this is what I'm dealing with right now. I thank you for joining us, and I hope you join us next time. Please leave a comment. That is the most important thing with all of these platforms. Leave a comment, subscribe, please, 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 because we need to get this going. If you're listening to this on any podcast catcher like iTunes or Apple Podcast or Spotify or whatever it may be, please leave a comment. We got some bad comments not too long ago, 2017, whenever we went through a series on critical race theory, way before that word was even out there in the public. And people got really mad. A lot of progressives came in and gave us bad reviews, lots of bad reviews, because they didn't like what we were saying. Well, I mean, it kind of all turned out exactly the way we said, at least the way Clint Roberts said, who was my guest that time. All right, guys, we'll see you next time. Thank you.